In this video, we'll show you how to install an aftermarket HD14 Stage 3 on a 2018 Street Glide. Now the first thing we need to do is make sure you have the radio flashed by an authorized Rockford Fosgate dealer. We have a list of dealers that can flash on our website. The stock radio contains an excessive EQ curve preset by the factory. Now this is fine for factory setups, but with the high performance aftermarket system, you need to remove that EQ curve. This will allow you to experience the full potential of your high performance aftermarket system. All right, let's get started by removing the seat using a number 2 screwdriver. On this model, it's a thumb screw. Then we'll use a 1/2 inch socket to remove the ECU cradle out of the way to access the battery. Then once that's done, you can use a 10mm socket or Phillips screwdriver to disconnect the battery terminals. Now we're ready to remove the fairing. First, we'll install the service cover on the fender. Then we'll use a T27 Torx driver to remove 4 screws on the inside and 3 bolts that hold the visor in place. Now, it's best to have 2 people for this step, one to hold the fairing in position and the other to remove the screws. Once we pull up on the fairing, we'll disconnect the harness and remove it from the bike. Now we're ready to remove our speaker pods. We'll start by disconnecting the harnesses on the side and top of the pods by using a flathead screwdriver or a plastic removal tool. Then we'll use a 5/32 Allen to remove the 2 screws from the top of each pod. Now we'll move down and remove the 3 bolts from the lower inside using a 7/16 socket with the swivel joint and extension. These can be difficult to access, so we recommend detaching the lower harness panel with the number 1 Phillips to give you extra space. Finally, we'll use a 3/16 Allen to remove the 3 screws from each pod. Now we're ready to remove the factory equipment and install our new speakers. The TMS65 speakers included in your kit contain extra grills for road glide and tour pack installs. For our batwing fairing, we're going to use this grill with the 3 tabs. Note that there are left and right grills. We'll start by using a T25 Torx and remove 3 screws holding the factory grill. We'll use the same hardware to secure the new grill in place. Take note when installing, the logo will reside at the bottom. We'll use the same T25 Torx to remove 4 screws from the speaker pod and install the new speaker with the logo toward the bottom as well, and connect the red wire to the positive terminal and the black wire to the negative terminal. Once you're done, repeat the process on the other pod. Now that we have that done, we'll loosely thread the 2 screws on the top of each pod to ensure proper alignment. Once that's done, you can reinstall the lower inside bolts and re-secure your harnesses back in place. Finally, we'll use the 3/16 Allen driver to secure the outer 3 screws that hold the pods in place, and finish securing the 2 top screws on each pod. Now that we have that done, we're ready to remove the gas tank. We'll get started by disconnecting the gas line. Push up on the hose, and while sliding the fitting upward, pull down on the gas line. Next, detach the rubber boots from the front of the gas tank and use a 1/2-inch socket to remove the bolts. Then remove the 2 bolts holding the rear of the tank in place. Finally, disconnect the electrical harness and pull the 2 breather lines in the back. Note that they may be zip tied underneath. Carefully remove the gas tank from the motorcycle. Now we're ready to install our power harness. First, cut any zip ties off and unsnap the wiring trough cover. Once that's done, we'll take the power connector side of our harness and run it up the clutch side of the motorcycle. We'll route our harness through the main opening up to the headlight area following the factory wiring harness. Make sure you have enough slack to make your battery and amplifier connections. Now we're ready to prep our amplifier bracket. Start by removing the top air vent using a T27 Torx. Then remove any wiring harness from the top of the radio. If you have a satellite antenna, carefully relocate it to the side. Then use a T25 Torx to remove the 4 existing top screws. Now we'll install our 4 standoffs using a 10mm socket. Next, position the heatsink with the fins facing outward and secure it in place using a 1/8-inch Allen driver and provided flathead screws. Now that we're done with that, we're ready to tune our amplifier. We offer an amp tuning guide that's available in the description of this video and through this kit's product details page at rockfordfosgate.com. Use the included 3mm Allen wrench to remove the control cover. Then use the tuning guide to verify all your settings are correct. A minimal adjustment should be needed to tune the amp. Once done, reinstall the cover. Now we're ready to secure the amplifier to the amp bracket using the supplied hardware and 2.5mm Allen wrench. Now before installing the amplifier, note the orientation of the Rockford Fosgate logo. Now let's take a closer look at the T-harness. The female T-harness is where the factory harness plugs into. Then the male end plugs into the radio. The amp inputs are for the front and rear signal input. The amp outputs are for the front and rear speakers. This is the amp turn on when using the DSR processor. These Y adapters split the front and rear outputs for additional speakers. Finally, these harnesses are used together for the DSR. Now we're ready to install our T-harness that allows us to interface our Rockford Fosgate audio with the Harley-Davidson electrical system. Take the factory connector and plug it into the female side of the T-harness and lock it in place. Then plug the new T-harness into the rear of the radio and lock the connector. Now we're ready to make our amplifier connections. We'll start with the amp input harness and connect the front and rear to the corresponding amp inputs. Next, connect the Y adapters to the amplifier's front out and rear out connectors. Take the T-harness labeled amp output and attach these to the corresponding amplifier's front out and rear out, noting you can use either end of the Y adapter. Finally, plug the power into the amplifier connector and plug the blue wire into the empty connector on the top brake side. This blue wire is the amplifier remote turn-on. Take note that there is likely an empty plug that needs to be removed before making your connection. Let's take a second to clean up our wiring in the fairing using the provided zip ties. Make sure to leave access to your Y adapters. Once that's done, you can reinstall your upper air vent. All right, we're ready to prepare our bag lids for speaker installation. To get started, we use 3M masking tape to cover the top of the bag lid so we don't scratch the paint. Position the template on top, making sure the front lip of the template is sitting firmly against the ridge of the bag lid. Then mark the 2 pilot holes on top. Remove the template and use a 1/8 inch bit to drill 2 holes. Secure the template in place using a number 2 Phillips and the small screws provided in our kit. Our template makes this easier to perform this task on the motorcycle. All right, now that we have that done, we'll use a 5/16 bit to drill our pilot holes. Use a saw with a fine-tooth blade and follow along the template while staying within the guides. To maintain accuracy, do not cut the segments of the template until all the slots have been cut. Cutting into the template at this time will lead to fitment issues, especially at the corners. Once you're done, remove the template and clean up the cutouts, making sure there are no burrs around the edges, and test fit our grill. Once you're happy with the fitment, remove the masking tape and repeat the process on the other side. Now we're ready to install our speakers. First, we'll open the bag lid and position the mounting ring and grill in place to make sure that they're properly aligned. The grill goes on the outside and our mounting ring on the inside, where we'll sandwich them together to the bag lid. Using a number 2 Phillips, secure 4 of the smaller screws supplied in the kit. Be careful not to over tighten these. Once that's done, we'll align the speaker and the basket protector assembly with the speaker terminals toward the rear of the bike and secure it to the mounting ring from the inside using 4 long flange button head screws. Once you're done, repeat the process on the other side. Now we're ready to run our bag lid harness. First, remove both the saddlebags and service covers. Next, route the harness through the trough and up toward the fairing area. Pull the harness through and make your connections to the rear output Y adapter. Now we'll move to the back of the motorcycle. We'll start with the brake side harness and run it under the seat frame to the rear bag area. We'll zip tie along the frame and the first eyelet. On the clutch side, we'll use a 1/2-inch socket to slightly pull out the fuse panel and route our harness toward the rear bag area. Now that we have our harness laid out, we're ready to drill our holes into the bags. We're measuring approximately 4.5 inches down from the front of the bag's quick release and 3.5 inches from the side of the bag. On our motorcycle, this configuration keeps the harness away from any moving parts. We'll need a 3/4 inch hole for installation of the grommet. To get the hole started, we'll drill a 1/8 inch pilot hole, then switch to a step-up bit to increase the hole to the appropriate size. Once you're done, repeat the process on the other side. Now we're ready to wire our bag lids. Start by replacing both service covers back on the motorcycle. Next, we'll position our bag in place. Insert the harness and secure the grommet into the 3/4 inch hole. Once you have the grommet seated, finish securing the bag into place. Now once that's done, use the pigtail harness included in the kit and connect the red wire to the positive terminal, marked with a red dot, and the black wire to the negative terminal. Then, plug the pigtail into the main harness. We've included zip ties, zip tie mounts, and retainer clips to help keep your wiring out of the way inside the bag. We've also included some replacement warning stickers for installation on your lids. Once you're done, repeat the process on the other side. Now that we have that done, we'll clean up our wiring, reinstall the center trough, install our gas tank, and make our battery connections. Be sure the gas tank harness is connected before proceeding to prevent any error codes. Now we're ready to test the system. If you haven't had the factory Harley-Davidson radio flash, now is the time to do this. Refer to your tuning guide for testing procedures and make any adjustments as needed. If your radio is not flashed, keep the volume to a minimum or you will damage your speakers. You can find a list of dealers that flash on our website at rockfordfosgate.com. Now that everything is working properly, let's finish reassembling this motorcycle and get it back out on the road. As you can see, that install was pretty straightforward. If you prefer a professional do the install for you, we have a network of authorized Rockford Fosgate dealers that can be found on our website. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact our technical support. They can be reached Monday through Friday at 1-800-669-9899 or through live chat at the bottom of our website at rockfordfosgate.com. Until next time, I'm Eric. We'll see you again soon.